The case of Berghs Limited v. Clark from 1935 is a landmark decision in UK tax law. It addresses the crucial distinction between capital and income receipts. This distinction is fundamental to determining tax liabilities for businesses. The case arose from a complex commercial arrangement between two margarine manufacturers. Berghs Limited, a British company engaged in the production and sale of margarine, had entered into agreements with a Dutch company, Anton Jurgens Verenigde Fabrieken N.V. These agreements were aimed at regulating competition and sharing profits. The arrangements were extensive and long-term in nature. The case centered on a substantial payment made to Berghs Limited as part of a settlement to terminate the agreements. The key question was whether this payment should be treated as a capital receipt or as income. The answer would have significant implications for the company's tax liability. The case made its way through the UK legal system and was ultimately decided by the House of Lords in 1935. The decision would set an important precedent in tax law.
The agreements between Berghs Limited and Anton Jurgens Verenigde Fabrieken N.V. were complex and far-reaching. They were first entered into in 1908. The agreements were designed to regulate competition between the two companies in the margarine market. This was a time of intense competition in the industry. Under the agreements, the companies agreed to share profits from their respective businesses. They also agreed to exchange information about their operations. The agreements covered a wide range of markets, including the United Kingdom, Ireland, and various other countries. The arrangements were intended to last for a considerable period. The agreements were renewed and modified over time. In 1913, a new agreement was made, set to last until 1940. It included provisions for the companies to pool their profits, which would be divided according to an agreed formula. This arrangement effectively created a partnership between the two companies. The agreements also included provisions for arbitration in case of disputes. This would prove significant in later events. The long-term nature of these agreements was a key factor in the subsequent legal case. It would play a crucial role in determining whether the payment received by Berghs Limited was capital or income.
In 1927, a significant event occurred that would lead to the legal dispute. The relationship between Berghs Limited and Jurgens had become strained. Disagreements had arisen over the interpretation and implementation of their agreements. As a result, the arbitration clause in their agreements was invoked. The arbitration process was complex and lengthy. It involved detailed examination of the company's operations and finances. The arbitrators had to consider the intricate arrangements that had been in place for nearly 2 decades. Their task was to resolve the disputes and determine a fair outcome for both parties. During the arbitration process, it became clear that the existing arrangements were no longer tenable. The companies had grown and evolved since the original agreements were made. The market conditions had also changed significantly. As a result, both parties recognized the need to terminate their long-standing agreements. The outcome of the arbitration was a settlement agreement. Under this agreement, Jurgens agreed to pay Berghs Limited a substantial sum of £450,000. This payment was in consideration for the termination of the profit-sharing agreements. It also compensated Berghs Limited for giving up their rights under these agreements. The settlement marked the end of the long-standing commercial relationship between the two companies.
The crux of the legal dispute in Berghs Limited v. Clark centered on the nature of the £450,000 payment. The key question was whether this payment should be classified as a capital receipt or as income. Berghs Limited argued it was a capital receipt, compensation for the loss of a capital asset.
The Inland Revenue represented by Clark argued it was income, a lump sum in lieu of future profits. The distinction between capital and income is crucial in tax law. The stakes were high for both the company and the tax authorities.
Section 5, Decisions of the General Commissioners and Court of Appeal. The case was first heard by the General Commissioners for Income Tax. This body had the initial responsibility for determining tax disputes. the General Commissioners ruled in favour of Berghs Limited. They agreed with the company's argument that the payment was a capital receipt. The General Commissioner's decision was based on several factors. They considered the long-term nature of the agreements between Berghs Limited and Jurgens. They also took into account the fact that the payment was made to terminate these agreements. The Commissioners viewed the agreements as a fundamental part of Berghs Limited's business structure. However, the Inland Revenue was not satisfied with this decision. They appealed to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal reversed the decision of the General Commissioners. They ruled that the payment should be treated as income. This decision was a significant setback for Berghs Limited. The Court of Appeal's reasoning focused on the nature of the rights that were given up. They viewed the profit-sharing arrangements as essentially an income-producing agreement. From this perspective, the lump sum payment was seen as a substitute for future income. This decision highlighted the complexity of the issue and the different ways it could be interpreted.
Section 7. Key concepts: capital versus income and fixed versus circulating capital. The Berghs Limited v. Clark case highlights key tax law concepts. The distinction between capital and income is crucial for tax liabilities. Capital receipts are generally treated more favorably than income receipts. Fixed capital assets generate income but aren't traded. Income is the profit from using capital. Fixed capital is retained to generate income, while circulating capital is turned over in business. The House of Lords treated profit-sharing agreements as fixed capital. Section 8. Related cases and their significance. The Berghs Limited v. Clark case does not stand in isolation. It forms part of a body of case law dealing with the distinction between capital and income. One significant related case is Glenboig Union Fireclay Co. Limited v. IRC. The court ruled that payments for fireclay were capital receipts. Another important case is Regent Oil Co. Limited v. Strick. The House of Lords ruled these payments were capital expenditure. The case of Inland Revenue Commissioners Vif Karen Company is also relevant. The court ruled that compensation for loss of agency agreements was a capital receipt. These cases help establish principles for distinguishing between capital and income receipts.
Section 9. The House of Lords decision. The House of Lords ruled in favour of Berghs Limited. They overturned the Court of Appeal, declaring the payment a capital receipt. This decision was unanimous. The Lords emphasised the long-term nature of the agreements. These agreements regulated competition and coordinated business activities. Terminating these agreements altered Berghs Limited's business structure. The company gave up a significant business asset. The payment was not an advance on future profits. It was part of the company's fixed capital. This decision is a leading authority in tax law.
Section 10. Implications for business tax liabilities. The Berghs Limited v. Clark decision has significant implications for business tax liabilities. It clarifies principles for distinguishing between capital and income receipts. This distinction is crucial for tax treatment. Long-term arrangements can be part of fixed capital. Payments for terminating such arrangements may be capital receipts. Capital gains often have lower tax rates than income. The decision underscores the need for careful tax planning.